of the department. And 50 years is quite a long journey for a department. And for many of you who are well versed with the discipline in the country, it is of significance that were started in the mid 1970s. So you will have a series of celebrations in the coming days where each department is going to look at its 50 years of journey. We are also happy, that is on behalf of the ICA India chapter, to be collaborating with the department in their event. And ICA India chapter is not one of the other new organizations that we are going to talk about, but it was flagged off in March with intended objective of promoting academic research and publication collaboration between and among institutions, young and middle level scholars in the country. And just now we had uh, what should I say, intended perspectives from both Thailand and Nepal as to how they would like to also collaborate in the activities. Uh, there were two panels that we had planned for this event. One was global, that got over about 10-15 minutes ago. And now we have what we understand as the Indian panel on journalism and mass communication. Um, Definitely, the overarching theme, as many of you have noted, and probably also felt whether that theme is part of this panel discussion. Actually, the theme is the theme that is fixed for the Golden Jubilee, which is media at crossroads. But media educators here and in the room, and all of you, are also aware that media education and training uh, either is subsumed in the developments in the media sector. Who leads what is an important key question that many of us have raised in the past. So, today's discussion and the way the panel has been formulated is intended to take both a pan India perspective, wherein one of the resource persons has done various kinds of studies and analysis about the status of education, and they also intend to bring in the whole question of diversity, plurality, inclusivity, etc., into the both not only the media sector but also the way the media education is being shaped. We have a resource person from the Northeast, Professor Joy Chakravarti, who is going to look at a regional perspective. While Meera Desai, as part of her work for the World Journalism Education Congress, has done, as I said, a number of activities and also offered different perspectives over a period of time. I'm happy to first hear it because we have worked on we have Professor Sanjay Randy with us, and we have Professor Sanjay Randy with us. A few years ago, instrumental in the context of country journalism and mass communication education. He suddenly hit upon an idea of a perspective or a book or a publication institution. I thought that the kind of effort he has brought in to look at the developments across the country would be an interesting perspective, and he may want to go beyond that. I requested him for that perspective. I definitely would like to call upon the resource persons to offer their interpretations and perspective as they deem fit for this particular occasion. In Berhampur, at the conference table, we have more than 30 to 40 people who are present here in person in the conference room. We also have, panelists who are here. We have Dr. Anand Pradhan from Indian Institute of Mass Communication, Denkanan, who was also part of the panel that we formulated for this particular session. I had particularly requested him to look at the trajectory of the National Institute of Mass Communication into what it is today, from a training academy to move towards a diploma program, and now it intends to shape itself as a university in the coming years. It has already become a university, but there are many other programs, etc., that they have developed. We have two distinguished visitors from California, Professor and Mrs. Pandey, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, here with us, and we have Professor of Mass Communication from Utkal University. Swarnamoy Tripathi from Utkal University. We welcome you, ma'am. And without much ado, and taking into account the time constraints, we will start with Meera Desai, followed by Joya, Anand, and Sanjay Ranade in terms of the panelist presentations. And we will have a few observations and comments from the panelists who are assembled here. Apart from that, we are also giving the liberty to both the virtual attendees as well as the attendees in the conference room to raise their hands or put a question that we will note down, and probably I, on behalf of them, will carry forward that question to you. Okay. Over to you, Meera. Meera Desai, as I've already introduced,
Yes,
needs
thank
no
you, sir.
introduction in terms of her background in this subject. Thank you, Meera, for agreeing, and you're on. Your time begins now. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Actually, thank you for thinking about me. So I'll try and keep it as brief as possible. I think there has been a kind of a discussion about how it began also now, because as we all are aware, we had been kind of crediting Dr. Annie Besant with the beginning of journalism education in South, and then Professor Ravindran has come up with kind of additional documents with reference to the Adyar initiative. And he's talking about 1917 as a kind of a beginning of communication education or journalism education, as we all kind of talk about. And if we kind of take a kind of all India perspective, then South was the first to kind of begin journalism programs. Then came the North. Pre-independent India, as we all are aware, around 1941, the program started in Lahore, and then it kind of started its classes in 1948. And then we see the West kind of took over around 1954 in Nagpur, and then East is kind of pretty nascent as far as journalism education is concerned. That's what kind of largely we see. And I'm sure we all are aware that now we only don't have a journalism education trajectory, but a long trajectory in terms of electronic media, film education, animation education, and new media education. So there has been a kind of a shift in terms of journalism education as conventionally that we all are kind of aware. And there is a parallel actually history which very little is written about, is also about printing technology, because I think when we talk about journalism, then there is also a kind of a history of how did we teach print technology. Who started all this? We have a kind of very interesting histories from press clubs, actually, in Kerala, in Pune, and a lot of other places in the country. Press clubs started off programs in journalism to begin with. Then we have kind of language departments who are credited with journalism education. Largely, the state has supported media education, as we all are aware, and Much later, we are seeing that private organizations and media companies or media corporations have taken over. Missionaries also have been kind of credited with beginning journalism education programs. And as far as Northeast is concerned, then we also had Directorate of Information and Public Relations who started off the programs. So, but largely, as we all understand, that public investment in journalism education has been the kind of at the forefront. How did it get implemented? If we largely kind of look at it, then as I said, it started off largely for working journalists to upgrade themselves, because a lot of them came from other disciplines, and then they became journalists, and then they were to be trained about journalism. Then it became an elective paper for other subjects. So there is a history of political science department starting a journalism program in one university. Then there were kind of 1 year bachelor programs in journalism. So there were graduates who took 1 year bachelor's program, and then eventually there was 1 year master's. What we are seeing today in terms of a core BMM or BA mass media or multimedia and all those, so undergraduate programs began much later. And I'm sure we all are aware that PhD, PG, and research is still to be shaping up as far as India is concerned. The trajectories are also very interesting, because as far as North is concerned, you see much more technology focus. Largely, they talk about electronic media, multimedia, and all that. The South talks largely about cultural studies, media studies, and analytical kind of processes. The East seems to be kind of taking over in terms of BVOC programs. Like what I kind of could gather is there were a lot of programs which are more in terms of vocationalization. And West, like I come from Gujarat, and what we see is like sir is here, and Bombay University renamed its mass media program as mass multimedia and mass communication program. The nomenclature is not clear, as we all are aware. We all have kind of varied nomenclatures that across the country, different people have been using. There are critical challenges in terms of faculty, theory, practical balance, teaching materials, vacancies. Like there's a little documentation with reference to how many communication programs have single faculty, and one can actually vouch for it. I'm one of the persons. We also have a history of closure of industry run communication programs. So that's kind of another dimension. Pedagogical challenges and strategies is another dimension that we all kind of still need to look at. And then this whole dimension of redundancy of technology, because what we are seeing today is a very different media environment than the media environment that was kind of 100 years back. So in terms of kind of integration of the entire discipline and trajectory, there are kind of arguments. Satya from South has written a very interesting paper, and I must thank Professor Banawat, because there are very interesting volumes on 100 years of communication education, and when very, very in-depth analysis and individual anecdotes are kind of documented, fortunately for all of us, for future. So largely, we don't have a kind of a uniformity or standards as of now. It's kind of very beautiful in a way, because we have a lot of diversity across the country. And in terms of research, we have a kind of very interesting work. IIMC is kind of now a university, so Dr. Pradhan will kind of talk about it. So we have some very interesting times right now, because the discipline is still shaping up. Journalism education has shifted completely and has gone into a broader umbrella of communication and media studies, and a lot of things are happening. So I think that's broadly for me. I can kind of take it further if required. Thank you so much. Joya, over to you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mira. I'm sure that there will be a lot of questions or observations. We will take it as they come. May I now request Professor Joy Chakrabarti from Tejpur Central University to offer her comments and perspectives. I had particularly requested her to throw some light on the Northeast region, and also highlight the contributions of two important faculty members from Behrampur University, Professor Dashrathi Mishra and Professor Sunil Behra, who for long and short periods have also contributed to the development of the department there. Over to you, Joya, and nice to have you with us today on this panel. Joya, your time is on.
Thank you, sir. And thank you to the organizers at Berhampur University for giving me this opportunity to be here today as part of this panel. Indeed, sir, as you have rightly mentioned, Berhampur University, though I haven't visited that place personally, kind of seems like a family, at least for us here at Tejpur University, specifically because of Professor Dashrathi Mishra and Professor Shunil Kant Behra, who have been integral parts of our department. Professor Dashrathi Mishra and Professor Behra were associated right from the beginning of the establishment of our department in 2001. They were the people, Professor Behra was here as a head of the department, and he kind of gave the academic culture and structure of the department, which we believe that we are still carrying forward. And very recently, even during the pandemic, so he again joined us in 2016, and he was here till 2022. And that was also a very, very important phase of our department, where the research and other academic activities of the department really took shape under his guidance. So it would be very less to say that at least the academic and the research structure of our department have been largely shaped by these two individuals. So Behrampur University has had a very close connection with us in that respect. And Professor Behra was also very closely associated with the different media departments in Northeast India. So I have a quick presentation. I'll try and just highlight the points. I won't elaborate a lot on that. But where I had just attempted to. Is my screen visible to everyone? No? Okay.
Nope. It's all right, Joya. If you want to linger on your slides and talk about it, it's
No
fine.
problem. No problem. I'll just go ahead. So just a moment. Yeah. So what I would want to highlight is that media education in Northeast started in 1967. So as the beginning within the region is concerned, it's pretty old, like 1967. And that was in Guwahati University, a state university. And the first, even today, very important sort of undergraduate program is by St. Anthony's, which is known and which has a lot of repute as far as the entire country is concerned. And the first master's program was started by Assam University. So following that, I have just tried to kind of structure and look at, for the purpose of this presentation, that what has been the major environment of education, media education within Northeast India. So what comes out is that I would again say that mostly if we have to highlight the common issues that we talk of, the issues which have already been highlighted by Meera, Madam, is that we are looking at faculty strength, being Northeast, and having started the media education in 1967. And later on, we saw the surge coming in post 1995, and more so from 2010 onwards. So from 2010 onwards, we actually see that there has been a boom in the media industry, and concurrently, we also see the growth of the I really wanted to show the presentation. We see the growth of the media education pattern here. So I believe the screen is visible now.
No,
No,
I think
what's
you're
going
sharing.
on?
We can't see what you're sharing.
No, Jaya, it's okay. Please highlight the points. Okay, no
Okay,
issues.
okay, okay. I wouldn't waste time rather. So, what are the key points which I wanted to highlight were that if we look at the faculty strength within the entire region, now we are about 10 departments, primarily the central university departments, though there are some state universities and departments out there, and around 48 faculty members, where we have 9 professors, 33 assistant professors, and 6 associate professors. So, what comes out here is a lack in the middle order. We have lots of assistant professors, and yes, given that there are 10 universities there, about 9 professors around, talks about more or less balance out there. But when it comes to the associate professor, the middle order, that's somewhere we are lacking. We do not have the middle order faculty members there. I would say how that becomes significant a little later on. Then another thing in terms of the concerns of a media department, when it comes that we need to today, even within NEP, we need to talk about the proper training of students. So faculty is one part, the training infrastructure and the possibilities are another part. When we say that the media academic environment has grown post 2010, that has been concurrent with the growth of the industry. But importantly, most of the students who are trained in these departments rarely find employment in the local media industries. They have mostly moved beyond this particular region, because most the political economy of the media industry within the region does not provide appropriate remuneration that students who are educated within the region would want to join the media industry within the region. So that's a big gap that we constantly are looking at, and that has also created a sort of a gap in the exchange of knowledge and understanding between the local industry, media industry, and the academic institutions which are there. So this gap is affecting in a large way. The research environment, again, if I have to say, this is in terms of the industry academia. In terms of the research environment, if we see, then there was a lot of emphasis in terms of the number of PhDs. I just did a structural understanding, and then we see that there were about 80 PhDs produced from within the region during the last 2 years. And out of that, the largest share, more than around 50 PhDs, are produced by Assam University, Silchar, from that department. These are all media related and communication related PhDs that are produced within the region. A short word graph that I created from analysis of the methodologies shows a emphasis on surveys, content analysis, and interviews, where all other methodologies are minimal. But the word cloud kind of shows in terms of topics and uh, the areas in which the study is undertaken. Then we see a lot of emphasis on gender, on journalism, on newspapers, primarily research happening on the print media. So even today, when we are looking at the type of research that's happening, there is emphasis on communication for social change, gender, journalism, newspaper, and we also see a lot of research happening on social media. Reading these two sets of data together, where we see survey, interview, and content analysis, and we see gender, journalism, newspaper, social media, and communication for social change. If we look at these two data with each other, we see that the research environment has not probably matured a lot in order to look at alternative, concurrent, and other methodologies which are appearing. So it requires that the type of research that's happening within the region needs to go beyond the most treaded path, probably, and explore into other areas, non-conventional areas and emerging areas of research. So that's it's sort of a picture which comes out from looking at the research environment of the PhD thesis that is produced from here. Most of the research done is also situated. I did a word cloud analysis of the research that's done, which is situated, what is the site of the research. And obviously, the different northeastern states that come up as the major site. But interesting to note that there is a lot of research happening on Saudi Arabia, Ethiopia, Rajasthan, Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh. So these are also the national and international locations of research, which shows a surge of students coming from outside to this particular region to do research on media and communication. This brings me to the questions with which I would want to conclude is that if we understand that the region needs to mature in terms of industry academia linkage as to where do the students who come out of these institutions find employment, what are we looking at? Are we trying to emphasize only on skills? Because nowadays we don't talk about problems of infrastructure, that we don't have a studio, don't have books. So that's not an issue mostly. So resources are there, but still employment opportunities are not abundant within the region. What type of skill sets are we imparting? None of the departments within the Northeastern region offer specializations. Courses are generic. So, what employment opportunities are getting generated for students? Where are they getting employed? Do we need to look at it and then restructure our course and curriculum? Does Northeast, for that matter, as a research lens, still hold a lot of validity, importance? Are people from outside coming and doing research here? Are we not doing enough to understand the other emerging areas of research that's there within the Northeast? And what structures of hand-holding in terms of research work, publication, and updating the pedagogy that the teachers have in that region can probably be facilitated by international associations, international and national associations like ICA and other such platforms. So, do we still talk about, quote unquote, the mainstreaming of Northeast, given that the politics of identity, the othering of the Northeast, still is very large in the mindset. It's not just about the social environment, but even within the academic environment, in spite of a lot of movement that's happening between the mainland India and Northeast, it still is holding currency. So these kind of have come up from the little bit of an analysis that I did for this particular presentation. So thank you. With this, I conclude.
Uh, Thank you, Joya, for bringing in both the dimension of mainstreaming and also the important question that you raised towards the end of othering of Northeast. These are important questions. And I think probably it is for the first time we are looking at a research output analysis, and I'm sure that you're working on it for better circulation in the country and outside, and that's useful for us. Now I move on to Professor Sanjay Ranade, who was with the University of Mumbai. Now he's working for a agency. And Sanjay Ranade, you're on, and please share your views with us, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjay. This, when Dr. Sanjay asked me to speak on this whole thing, the whole structure comes from a couple of writings which we did. The first one was my thesis, which I did in 2010-11, where I looked at the recipient's point of view of what makes news. This is because I was a journalist for almost 12 years before I started the department in Mumbai in 2003. And when I started that department, like any journalist, I assumed that I know what people ought to know and I know what people want to know. So I wrote in the Times of India, etc. But when I started teaching, I found that people have a completely different view of what makes news. So my question for the thesis was, what makes political news for people in Mumbai? That was the question. And I found some very interesting answers to that question. The next publication which I came up with, there were a lot of papers and all that. The next one is what Dr. Sanjay refers to. Is in 2018 our department completed 15 years. So I thought I should compile memories of those people who started their own departments in various parts of the country. And I was very lucky. Professor Sanjay helped me out with it, and a lot of people sent their own reminiscences about how they saw their own departments developing, moving, what changed. This was 2018. And in from 2020, 21, 22, 23, I studied international relations. I did a master's and I began to look at various aspects of information systems across the globe and how they affect us in India or affect me in my classroom. Eventually, in 2023, I resigned from the university because of a variety of situations which I saw in my classroom, and I realized that I have to go back and learn things before I can get into the classroom and say anything with any authority. So, what are the learnings from that? This whole journey. One of the first learnings which I've been struggling with, and this is I don't have answers, but these are the points which I'm struggling with, or I'm trying to understand or make sense of, which I have seen in my classroom. Now I see it on the other side because I'm working for a communications, all India communications agency, and we have all kinds of clients and all that. One of the first things that I found has changed for me as a teacher, for me as a practitioner, for readers, for audiences, and for the students' world also, is that from being active audiences in 2000, around 2000, audiences began to get very active instead of remaining passive. From becoming active audiences, somewhere in 2010, 11, they became user of the content, or they began to use it or find ways of using it. And by the time 2018, when we compiled those reminiscences, and from 2018 19, there is an emphasis on being able to perform on the content. So it is not enough for me to listen to a song. I have to make something out of that song and put it back into the system and even make money out of it. So there is a performative space. So we are no longer looking at users of content or consumers of content or customers of content. We are looking at performers, and that is the entire thing is a performance. So I'm going to watch a film. That idea itself is performed on Instagram, and then I get likes and dislikes, and people tell me which film, etc. And then from there till whether I watch or not watch a film, that entire thing itself is a performance, which is not in the control of those who are producing the content. Right? So I find that this is happening with news, with journalism also. This is one of the first things that I'm trying to wrap my head around. One of uh, the other problems which I begin to see, which is coming up, and it is quite a crisis, is that the Westphalian state system, it supported a certain kind of information system. So when we talk about autonomy of journalism, etc., we are talking about autonomy from the state. But the power of the state is challenged, especially if you're looking at the Westphalian system. There are at least two grounds on which we find some very dramatic changes which are happening. One is on the ground of territoriality. That physical idea of the territory is obliterated by the kind of media we have in our hands today. Also, the idea of sovereignty is very different. It is used or understood in a very different way by the 15-year-old and the 10-year-old in today's world. Those young people who are coming to us have a very different idea of what sovereignty means, or what territory means, what is a boundary, what is a border. This is a very complex development that is happening, and it is leading to some very interesting regional, sub-regional complexes, sub-nationalisms, etc. That is impacting the overall information system, and we are still only trying to understand it. We don't really know the answers. We are just trying to figure it out. That what does this really mean? So this is a big challenge for us in the media. If we are just speaking of the media, the third learning which I find is quite dramatic again, especially in countries which are colonized like India, that English writing skill was a specific barrier for entry anywhere in work, anywhere you wanted to grow or whatever. English writing skills was a barrier, which is no longer a barrier. A 10-year-old can produce the PhD thesis that we are talking about. Just go to ChatGPT and get it done. It can happen. Now, the problem here is that it brings a lot of people into the world with the assumption that I know. And the assumption is that I know because I can just produce it. I can write a letter to the President of India, to my local shopkeeper, to my boss, to my wife, to my husband, whatever. I can just do it. English writing skill doesn't seem to be a barrier to them at all. And it is actually not a barrier. And along with that, increasingly technology is reducing the entry barriers for audio. You can create your own sound, for video, for graphics, design. The entire, the entire scope of writing, design, graphic, etc. The entry barrier is being reduced so fast that the office peon is able to generate copy for an advertisement which is for a high class corporate. If that is how the entry barrier is going to be reduced, all those people in the middle are already seeing a red flag in terms of simply livelihood, etc. But even in complex terms, that what is really my worth. So we are in a very peculiar moral trauma, which is quite interesting, which I see, and uh, I'm trying to kind of work around it, but not that I have answers. But that is one of the problems that I see. And lastly, the relevance of journalism. Again, the whole relevance of journalism came within a certain Westphalian state, within a certain information system, and all that. But if the core reality of the Westphalian state itself is under tremendous stress, then the whole relevance of journalism itself needs to be checked again. That what kind of journalism do people want? What kind of information do they want? What kind of news? What kind of trends are they looking at? And why are they looking at all this? So those understandings that we want to people look at news to survey the environment for surveillance and security, and then having a social context, etc. All those contexts are changing so fast because we are facing younger and younger people who think that they are history in the sense that they are complete in their own way. So it is these are the questions which have come to me from those writings which I did. And um, I now that I'm outside again from the academic everyday classroom, I do continue to teach in different places, and I do that merely because I want to keep that hold or that connect to that world where I go and put all this. But looking at it from the performative side also, I find that we have some very interesting situations developing, and um, we need to really break down our teaching methods to more and more smaller components to deal with all of this. And I do see that because English writing skills have come down, I mean, the entry barrier is not there. Local language is coming out as very powerful because if you can, so I write in Hindi, I write in Marathi because those are two languages I am proficient in. So I know that if you're good in the local language, because so far artificial intelligence doesn't seem to have the kind of requisite translation skills. The metaphor actually is a big problem for AI. They can't deal with metaphor. But it's just a matter of time before they get all the data together. And there are some problems coming up with that field also. But these are the problems which I see, and I'm trying to address them, trying to sort of wrap my head around how they will impact all our industry, whether it is audiovisual or writing or journalism, etc. I don't have answers, like I said, but I'm just spending my time right now to understand what the problems are and how they will shape our teaching and learning in the years to come. Thank you.
Sanjay, for moving away from the reminiscence part, but still raising very significant questions. And I think the larger context of both pedagogy and approach to journalism teaching, more so also the language variable that you have talked about, is in fact a very important dimension. This also was revealed yesterday in the inaugural, where I found two important speakers, uh, you know, highlighting the problems in the tone and tenor of Orissa, Odia language and idiom, which was a very, what should I say, revealing and significant aspect, because the response from the audience to the kind of issues and concerns they raise, and you use the term metaphor, the local idioms, etc., I think were revealing. And I'm sure that Berhampur department in the days to come is going to definitely look at this important variable in terms of its teaching and approach. Uh, Thank you, Sanjay. And now we move on to Dr. Anand Pradhan, professor at IMC Deltana. With the permission of the panelists, I would like you to be around for 30 more minutes, please, because we may have an interactive session. I know conferences kind of go beyond that time, but we are having an interesting discussion or presentation. We'll move on with the dialogue also. May I request Anand to make his presentation?
Sir, it's not audible to us.
We can't hear you.
Uh, Actually, Professor Sanjay asked me to discuss about the growth and the evolution of Indian Institute of Mass Communication as a national institute in the area of journalism and mass communication. Um, uh, in I think in 2025, IMC will complete 60 years of its existence. It was established in 1965, and only this year, in 2024, we got later from Ministry of Education, which designated us as deemed to be university under distinct category. It's okay, sir. It's fine. So let me, I'm.
What for the other?
Yeah. Okay. So in last 60 years, it's a journey which is marked by a number of issues, challenges, and some achievement as well. Professor Sanjay was the director of Indian Institute of Mass Communication for 3 years. Uh, as a national institute, which was established with a mandate initially to train uh, officers or the professionals who are working with Government of India. Government of India wanted trained communication professionals who can manage the communication system or the communication part of the government. And that it was the time, the 60s and late 60s, when this whole debate about the information imperialism and the dominance of West, and also the demand for a new world information order was coming up. So at that time, India took lead under NAM, and this institute was established not only for training the government officials, but also mid-career journalists from developing countries of Africa, Latin America, and Asia. and slowly, particularly in news agency journalism. So institute started training them, and then in early 70s or mid 70s, we started a diploma program because there was a demand from the industry, especially media industry. And when I'm talking about media, media is a very large term, which the it includes especially the entertainment media. And for entertainment media, Minister of Information and Broadcasting established Film and Television Institute in Pune. But IMC, Indian Institute of Mass Communication, focus more on journalism part, news media. So to provide, professionals for news media industry, especially at that time, newspapers, news magazines. So we launched some of the PG diploma programs because it was institute. We could not launch a master's program. So we launched certain, PG diploma programs, and we slowly moved towards. It was again a very, a milestone in the history of media education or the journalism education in India. IMC started certain language journalism programs. So initially with English, and then moved to Hindi, and now we are offering in number of language journalism programs, including Odia journalism, which was started in Indian Institute of Mass Communication Eastern Regional Campus at Dhenkanal, where right now I'm working. And then in western part, in Amaravati, we have established now, we have more than 6 campuses. And in these campuses, we are running PG diploma programs in Marathi journalism, in Malayalam journalism, in Urdu journalism, in Hindi. And slowly, with the advent of television, we also started program in radio and television journalism in late 90s. Now we are at the cusp of a big transformation. We were demanding from the last 2 decades that institute requires some kind of a a space to grow, because as we were standalone institute, and because of that we could not offer master's program or PhD program, or at that time MPhil programs. So we were trying our best, but finally, with navigating a lot of regulatory hurdles and barriers. Finally, this year we got the upgradation to deemed to be university, and with the thank you. So with the deemed to be university, now we are offering master's program in Professor Sanjay says it's basically a specialization, but we thought that it's a niche area of journalism and mass communication. So we are now, this year we have launched 2 master's program. One is in masters in media business management, and the second one is masters in strategic communication. So these are the 2 programs, and in next 2 to 3 years, we have planned to launch few more master's program. One is in health communication, another is in digital media, and the third one is media and communication governance. So these are the some of the area, and probably maybe this year or next year we will launch also the PhD programs. But Professor Sanjay, because I don't know the time limit, I also wanted to discuss, because Professor Rana Day raised very important points. So when now we are discussing about the the state of media education in India, only this year in 2024, what we are witnessing in media education also. This year, one of the reputed institute in private sector, Indian Institute of Journalism and New Media in Bangalore, closed down. They have announced their closure because they were unable to get students, enough students to run their courses, and they are not alone. There are a number of the departments and universities and private universities and their departments. They are facing this crisis. They are not getting students. And what is the reason? The apart from the problems of our own media or journalism academia, the biggest problem which I personally think is in media profession, because most of the journalism departments are basically this is another debate which we were discussing from long time, that most of the journalism departments are, except few exceptions, most of the journalism departments are basically trade schools, working like a ITI, providing professionals, trained professionals for media industry. But the state of news media industry in India, and largely, the democracy in India, is really, in crisis. The nature of the job, especially in media industry, the precarious nature of the job, the issue of job security, working condition. Recently, CSDS, in its survey of more than 200 journalists from all over India, they found that almost three-fourths journalists in their survey, they were saying that if they get any opportunity to move from the journalism profession, they would like to leave the profession. So it's a very serious crisis, because on the one hand, their working condition, their job security, their salaries, everything is stagnant and going from bad to worse. On the other hand, while some bright students, they were joining journalism with a ambition that they can influence the society, they can become change makers, they can challenge certain notion and ideas. But in journalism, the job satisfaction which they were earlier getting, that job satisfaction is also not there. So apart from the precarious nature of job satisfaction is also not there. And because of that, most of the journalism departments are actually facing this challenge, and including Indian Institute of Mass Communication, the number of applicants every year are declining. This is the alarming trend, and which we must, ponder over. We must think about why. So most of the time, the debate in journalism education or the media education is how to match up, the industry standard and whatever is happening either technologically or, in their structure or in their style. We should, able to cope with that, and we should provide, the trained professional who are, trained in technology and whatever is required in the industry. But the way industry is, is structurally changing, and the way, especially think about the kind of monopolies or duopolies are increasing, with the Reliance and Disney, merging each other, and the big corporates are coming and controlling whole narrative. I think we we have to think about all these subjects. There are a number of issues, but because we don't have time, so during the interaction, if those questions comes, we will certainly like to discuss these things. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yes.
I have a question. Not
I think let first speak everyone, and then
Once we finish,
I know.
We have 15 minutes for it, don't worry.
Yeah, we have extended the session by 30 minutes. I've also requested the distinguished panelists who are in the virtual mode to kindly extend their participation. So we will have the questions, and we'll take it. Thank you, Anand, for that perspective, and also hinting at the crisis. You took off from what Professor Sanjay Ranade highlighted as a different kind of crisis in education. Both Meera and myself in whatever little we write about this sector, have already noted not only the changing structure of media industry, but how difficult it is for media institutions to align completely with the changing nature of the media structure. We have pedagogical challenges in the classrooms. As to what do we talk about ethics when the media sector is constantly in and out of changing and altering the ethical landscape of what they do. We are also caught up in a situation, particularly in the private sector, and you now mentioned IMC included, where probably at one point in time or more recently, we somehow overvalued the discipline. And overvaluation of the discipline is related to many factors, including, of course, the erstwhile glamour of working for the electronic media, which saw a spurt of media institutions, particularly post 1990. Of course, IMC by then had its own separate program in broadcast journalism, which it had more or less perfected in terms of advertising, public relations, etc. So, thanks for that perspective, and I'm sure many questions will come in. If not now, these questions will be pondered by the dynamic faculty, not only in Behrampur, but elsewhere. We have three distinguished people who have joined us in person at Berhampur. Um, Although they have not specifically indicated the area that they would talk about, but they come from a background of cultural anthropology as well as from media studies. So probably they would have some reactions and observations to what you said, apart from their own ideas. So may I request Professor Annapurna Devi Pandey from University of Santa Cruz in California.
It's University of California, Santa Cruz. I think Professor Pandey will start, and yeah.
Okay, fine. Okay. Professor Triloki Pandey will start his observations. The battery.
Please,
No, you have to connect the battery. It's
You
going
can
out.
just introduce yourself very briefly.
Yeah, please
Use the mic. Use the mic.
use the mic.
Because of the people are in the virtual mode, they cannot hear you.
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very happy to be here. You should know a little bit about me since I'm a foreign-based person. I left India in 1963, and I have spent the 61 years basically in Europe and North America. I was at Cambridge University, University of Chicago, University of Pittsburgh, Columbia University, New York University, and for the last 51 years at the University of California at Santa Cruz. And I had the privilege of visiting some 300 different universities all over the globe. And I take the opportunity to come back to India as often as I can. The two stretch of times I fondly remember. One was in 1969-70, when I was one of the initial fellows at the Institute of Advanced Study, Rashtrapati Nivas, Simla. And I had the opportunity to interact with journalists like Girilal Jain, Times of India, Mankekar, Times of, Girilal Jain, Hindustan Times, Mr. Mankekar, Times of India, a brilliant journalist, Puri, and then my friend Thapar, Ramesh Thapar, who started the seminar. And then again in 1984, by that time, I was fed up in the way India was represented abroad. From the British colonial times, we know that Indian civilization is made of two mutually antagonistic elements, the Indo-European North and the Dravidian South. and I realized that the Northeast India, which was completely neglected by the people who talk about India abroad. So I had the opportunity to interact with at least two very eminent people, one Indian, Professor M. N. Srinivas, and then the other, Louis Dumas, the French anthropologist. Both were my guests in Santa Cruz. So I asked Louis Dumas, how come, what is happening in India? At that point, this was in 1983, I was somewhat critical of India. If you live abroad, you always feel nostalgic about what is going on at home. And he said, look, India lived in my mind for 25 years. After I wrote Homo Hierarchicus, the caste system of India, I don't think about India, I think about Europe now. So I said, look, you mostly, all the sources you have consulted in your book, they are mostly about North and South. There is hardly about Northeast India. He said, look, I don't know anything about Northeast India. And as an anthropologist, we privilege a knowledge which is constructed through experience, through what we see. So the difference between a journalist and an anthropologist is we go for deep knowledge. You really do not have the time to acquire deep knowledge about whatever you are going to report. So you basically depend on what you have seen at the site of the thing which is happening and you are reporting about it. So we try to create a kind of rapport with the people who are giving us the information about what we are really studying. So anthropology is a kind of for 8 years or so. I was also fortunate to be his confidant. Whenever he has to criticize India, he will criticize outside, not in India, because in India he was number one in every way. So I asked him that in your social change in India, you talk about westernization, you talk about modernization, you talk about secularism. But here again, and then some thoughts on studying one's own society. So how come you never say anything about Northeast India? And he more or less said the same thing to me as Louis Dumas had said, that there is hardly anything written on Northeast India. So in 1984, after I had been chairman of my department for 3 years, I took sabbatical for a while and went to Northeast India. The Vice Chancellor of Northeast India, Northeast Nehru, Northeast Central University, was one Bidhi Sharma, Dr. Bidhi Sharma, who was a senior IAS from 1953, and we became friends. So he took me to see the states of Nagaland, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh, Tripura, and Meghalaya. So he said, why don't you come and spend some time in Northeast India? So I took leave from my university, became a UGC professor, and spent 2 years in Northeast India, uh, basically in Meghalaya, but visiting other states as well. What I found really disturbed me a lot. Bidhi Sharma he became the Vice Chancellor of Northeastern Hill University. He has been advisor to the Northeastern Research Council. There are, as the speaker was saying a little bit earlier, there are fundamental differences between Northeast India and the rest of India. So most of Northeast India are Mongoloid people. They are not like us. They are not like us people from north or south. They speak very different languages. Take, for example, the Nagas. There are 26 groups, different kind of Nagas, which constitute the Naga tribe. They speak 16 different languages. And Nagaland is one state in India where English is the state language, because they cannot communicate with each other in any other language. At one point, they had developed Nagamese, combination of some Naga languages as well as Assamese, but still by and by it started to disappear. The unfortunate thing was, I had the privilege, the Vice Chancellor had allowed me, that you just teach for one term, and rest of the time you are here, you go wherever you want to do, wherever you want to go, where you do whatever you want to do. And the university had given me a car and all kinds of other facilities, so I can do that. Most of the time, students were on strike. There were hardly people coming to teach the classes. At Northeastern Hill University, where I was located, there were 480 students and 180 professors. The Vice Chancellor told me that except for 4, the rest of them were not worthy to be in the university. And I fully agreed with what he was saying. They were there because they were getting 20% more than they could have gotten in other parts of India, to their salary, I mean. And but I befriended students. I began teaching, and my classes started at 8, no, 10, and I was staying in Shillong, Shillong Club. So I will be exactly 5 minutes before 10. I began with 2 students. By the time I finished, all 30 students who were registered in that course started to come. Most of the professors who will invite me their homes, I will see their students roaming here and there. I said, how come you guys are just roaming here? He says, professor did not come. I will go to their houses and I will say, how come you did not come? They said, oh, I forgot. How can a professor forget to go to his class? So
Technical session.
So in a way, because the people of Northeast India, when I was talking with them, the things they will say is that you are an Indian who does not live in India, you live abroad. But when you come to India, does anybody ask you whether you are an Indian or not? And they are, including the chief ministers of the state of Arunachal Pradesh or Nagaland, will tell me that when they go to attend the chief minister's meeting, fellow chief ministers' meeting, they ask them, where do you come from? When we say Arunachal Pradesh or Nagaland, they say, oh, because these are the Mongolite people. They kept telling me that we don't recognize ourselves represented in other parts of India as part of India. It is wonderful that in the last 20 years or so, the states in India have started to recognize the importance of Northeast India. And in the next 20 years or so, as you will see, the representation of India, both in India as well as abroad, will change. I will tell you a few anecdotes about my interactions with the journalists.
So we'll have an interaction later also, because technical session is going to begin.
So we'll
Okay.
continue.
So I will just make 2 comments. As one of the speakers was saying, you have chosen to be in a very difficult profession. The democracy is on decline almost everywhere. Unfortunately, we have not understood the spirit of democracy. We have gotten stuck with the form of democracy. So we think democracy is electoral form. You get elected and you are custodians of democracy. That is not what democracy is all about. The spirit of democracy, tolerance, people who are speaking truth to power, people who are representing diverse point of view about whatever reality you are considering, they are marginalized, they are silenced, and in many parts of the world, they are even killed. So I'm a little bit disturbed about the role you have chosen to be in society, but I applaud for the task you have chosen for yourself, and all kudos to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Pandey. Sorry to have cut short your interesting observations. Now, I would like to give opportunity to the people from the floor to ask questions before I move on to our 2 other research persons to the committee. Any immediate questions?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, please. Yes.
My question is to Professor Meera Desai, madam.
Yeah.
There is she's highlighted few media education is started in their local area through press clubs. So what kind of activities they are planning to develop the media? This is my question. And second question to Professor Jaya Jodha, madam.
Meera
Of course, Mira Desai will come in. The press associations decided to start evening journalism programs, basically as a kind of an opportunity for working journalists to formally get educated and also for college students to take an interest in journalism. Press Club of Trivandrum, YMCA, and others are examples of that kind of an effort. That Meera Desai has already written about it, but I thought that for time constraint, I could explain what the role was. Any other question, please?
No, sir, we'll move to ma'am, sir. We'll move to ma'am. But we'll complete everything, sir, and if time permits, we'll definitely. Because all three are in the panel, sir.
Yeah, I will be very short,
Technical
so that
session.
way we can continue. I would love to hear from
And I think
you.
our students will be interacting with them, sir.
Yeah,
After
I
taking
want to make it as interactive as possible. So is that?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. Thank you.
No,
Thank you,
mic is off.
organizers, and especially Professor Vandita Panda, for inviting us to be part of this wonderful.
No, no.
To be part of this wonderful conference, international conference, Media at Crossroads, Identity, Inclusion, and Representation in the Digital Age. Let me, for the students and faculty here at the university and especially in this program, I must congratulate you all for being part of this program. Because in the 1970s, when I was looking to do something different, I was tired of studying psychology for my undergrad degree. I was looking for something different. Barampur was the pioneer because it had the labor welfare. I was very motivated to join and this kind of pioneering program. And all the other universities have followed Barampur University. So you are very lucky in that way to be part of this amazing program. And I must say, I just like to focusing on the topic. I would like to say a few words and also commenting on some of the presentations. I am a cultural anthropologist by profession. I studied sociology from at Ravenshire. I did psychology for my undergrad. Then I went to JNU to do my sociology with my master's, MPhil, and PhD. Then I taught at Ravenshire, Ramadevi for about 8 years. And I am from Baroda, Narsinghpur. Very proudly, I say I'm a Gujarati NGO. And I also have been living in the United States now for the last 35 years. I teach cultural anthropology at the university. I must say I take Odisha with me, what I do for my profession. I teach Odisha because when I teach cultures of India, India and Indian diaspora, there are about 5 million Indians of Indian origin living in the United States. So in North America, there is an organization called Odisha Society of the Americas, one of the oldest diasporic organization outside Odisha, which started in 1969, and especially the people who went from Odisha who were missing their Pokhalo, Machamoja, and Sajana Sago, then also Gapsap, and their language, their culture, their Odissi dance and music, and Odisha, the costume, and of course Jagannath. They started this organization, Odisha Society of the Americas. Today, it is one of the pioneering diasporic organizations. I was the president of this organization 2011 and 13. I'm a very proud Odia. So I must say that Odia American. And what is this kind of combination of journalism? I heard about the identity. I heard about the representation, issue of representation. I heard about the issue of inclusivity. And I heard about the crisis, what is going on, the closing down of the programs. And I see when I was just coming through, I saw sociology, Department of Sociology there. I find that teaching at a foreign university, teaching the white students about Odisha, about India, and making myself kind of, making them do research on this, on the subject, I realized what is the call of the day. Let's think about it. Instead of just calling it crisis and brooding over it, what can we do? What kind of, we think of? Instead of thinking of closing down, how can we think of changing the structure, the function of the program? Let's think about it. That in 2019, so when 2020, as you all know, being an academic, I'm very used to writing academic papers with all the jargons and postmodern and post-structuralism and kind of, name post the kind of, the feminist lingo, that I realized that who reads our stuff? The basic difference between journalists and anthropologists, what Professor Pandey just said, that about kind of, we are the gossip spreaders. We anthropologists are kind of, earn money from gossip. We do gossip. We are kind of, we are keeping our ears on all the time, just like you all. But and also always Professor Pandey gives this example that we take the knowledge from here and we sell it there in the kind of, abroad, and we do this exchange. So the kind of, how there is a marriage between journalism and anthropology, how we can think of an interdisciplinary program. Professor Sanjay, Professor Sanjay just said, are you in journalism? I said, no, sir, I'm not in journalism, but I can say a few words. So 2020, with my academic writing, with my academic kind of, hat, I realized that when COVID broke down, how isolated we became, right? Because we all kind of, started teaching from this kind of, just a screen. And it was, as you all know, how your experience has been. So I started a little bit of self-reflection and thought about self-representation, like the people like me, what they were going through, the Indian Americans. So, and by that time already, I could see that print journalism, print media was in crisis in America. That many of these kind of, print journals, like India Abroad, India, because we used to get kind of, that India Currents, and these kind of print journals, which kind of, we subscribe to, they closed down because there was no audience for it. And then these big companies, big kind of corporations who were sponsoring them, they closed down because of the cost. And the journalists were literally on the street. I know many of my friends. So that what happened, that there's kind of, they all went online. That, and then some new online journals started. For example, it's called AmericanKahani.com. Some of you may please look into it. AmericanKahani.com. Indian Currents also has become kind of an online journal, which has been one of the oldest diasporic journals in the United States. So I started talking to people like me, that kind of, to understand various problems, the challenges, the life experience, everyday issues. So, and I started writing for AmericanKahani.com. If you just check my name and go to AmericanKahani.com, you will see I am very, very prolific, because I started writing one piece, not like you all writing one piece maybe every hour, but I started because I had to do my own anthropological research. So, and I started writing very regularly. And by writing, like, I did not kind of, how do you write? You have to interview people, right? Because, and then also you have to hear their stories. So I combined my anthropological knowledge into my kind of, a journalistic, from a journalistic perspective, I started analyzing, and I used my anthropological knowledge, know-how, my methodology to collect journalistic information. So as a result, I represented by as a representative of my community, that kind of bringing in the voices of the people on very, very difficult issues. Because difficult issues, like for example, I just heard about the mainstream. Professor Pandey talked about Northeast, the othering we heard from Joya Madam, and that the othering of certain regions. If you look at in here in India, that I was just looking at the statistics, 88% of the journalists come from the general mass. 88%. What about the scheduled caste? What about the scheduled tribes? Tribes constitute about that 7% of the Indian population. Here in Odisha, about 25%. Think about it. What about them? Don't they have a voice? How long are we going to represent them? Because and when we represent them, we are already othering them. So I think because instead of closing down, instead of how can we turn the crisis upside down, we need to think about being more inclusive. Bring in the voices of the people who are underrepresented, who are not represented, who are silenced, who have been made completely oblivious. That so for that, like gender, for example, that kind of the people, the leads. I saw how many of you have seen the film, the documentary called Writing with Fire? Come on. You have to watch this documentary called Writing with Fire. Writing with Fire. We in the United, I show it for my class. I show this film. This is based on Khabar Leheria. Dalit women just with a smartphone going to people, going to politicians, going to kind of very, very difficult kind of territory, collecting their voices, kind of how the leads have been undermined, underrepresented, oppressed, and suffering. So this is Khabar Leheria documentary called Writing with Fire. It was even nominated. It has gone to many kind of festivals. So, and I interviewed the director. I got the film. I have written about the film. So, what I am trying to say that let's change our modus operandi as journalists. Let's kind of see how we can bring in the voices that will be more relevant, that will bring in the voice of the people who are silent. Number one, for example, when I write for American Kahani, I have India Currents. I just wrote a piece on Helpage India going to elderly self-help groups here in Odisha, in rural regions, and I have written a piece in America, India Currents. They have been reading about Odisha, what elderly people are experiencing in Odisha. So what I'm trying to say, I have interviewed people, those who are the Indian Americans going through domestic violence, the H4 visa holders. And when I write this, I know many people don't like it. Yeah, just 1 second. Yeah. So the mainstream, but the people who are experiencing it, they are my friends. I have called, I have got calls from all over. Could you please write my story? So change the mode, change the kind of the perspective. Last point I want to say, you all are amazing. You are doing great work. Think of how we can be more interconnected, we can be interdisciplinary, we can be more inclusive and focus on diversity. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, speak, sir. Yes, yes, madam. Please.
Yes. Honorable Chairperson of this plenary session, Professor Sanjay, and the esteemed panelists and the esteemed head of the department, Dr. Bandita, and delegates present here. I express my gratitude to the organizer for inviting me to share my experience regarding media education in Odisha. Let me clarify. I am not a journalism I'm not a journalism scholar, not even a professor in journalism. My parent discipline is political science, where I actually interacted with journalism. And I joined Utkal University as a professor in public administration. The moment I joined Utkal University, I got the chance to save the journalism education, the media education there in Utkal University. And though I was not having any degree in journalism, uh, but I was grown up being a daughter of a journalist. And my father was associated with the oldest Odia daily, Samaj, not as an employee, but as a uh, operation head of that organization. And I strengthened my Odia language by reading Samaj every day and writing from Samaj every day. So that is how my father thought that by reading the newspaper, I can strengthen my own mother tongue. Being with the journalism students for 11 years, more than a decade, what I found is that, the students hardly understand that the most difficult discipline in social science is journalism and mass communication. What I feel. It is an interdisciplinary subject. It is much more difficult than any, those royal subjects like political science, economics, sociology, etc., etc. Because if you want to become a journalist like P. Sainath, or for that matter, others who know much more about the nuances of journalism, you need to know much about social science as well as the nature of social change in society, as well as the developing technology that we are handling with. Unless and until we know this, we cannot become good journalists. But the point is that uh, Baranpur University is the first place which actually thought of uh, giving master's program in journalism and mass communication. This is in 1975 or something, 74. And you see, the virtual speaker said, it is the state which decided that we must have uh, some formal education in journalism and mass communication. That the state of Odisha said this. In 1993, the state also gave space to IIMC Ghana, from where we have very, very skilled journalists. The IIMC Dhenkanal has produced many skilled journalists of Odisha. In 2000, Utkal University began, though it is quite late, but at the turn of the century, began journalism and mass communication as a self-financing program. So all those journalists that you see, Manoranjan Mishra and so others, they are the product of Utkal University, the journalism and mass communication. But however, when the Department of Political Science decided to close the program, the Department of Public Administration, by that time it had been separated from Department of Political Science, it decided to bring journalism to its department through the UGC Innovative Program Scheme with a new name, that is Development Journalism and Electronic Communication. Since I had the background of political science and I became a professor in public administration, this word development journalism actually captured the consciousness of my mind. I thought, though I am not a student of journalism, but I took the challenge to set the syllabus and the course curriculum. Also taught in every semester one paper to the journalism students. That is how I became a media educator. Also, I interacted with students, those students who are in their 30s and 40s. I have interacted with them. They also interact with me. What is the problem now? With my utmost spirit and motivation to the students. Students did not take much interest in feeling proud that they have read journalism. That is what is my experience. I consider this discipline as a very, very dynamic discipline in social science. But the students do not understand this dynamism. And I didn't have much scope to make them understand. Only when I interacted with them, I could. One, if there is any program, one photograph, one news piece, spread among all journalist friends on the WhatsApp, and you find the same content in every newspaper next morning. What impact does it have on the reader's mind? Even if any journalist writes a good content, you feel that इतना अच्छी इसमें क्या है जो उसको पढ़ूं मैं? Let us not read it. The students actually do not understand the importance of media education. Second point I would like to point out, since the students are here, media has a great role to play. It can dethrone a ruler. Does any subject has this power? The journalists, if they come together, they can malign a ruler. They can speak the voice of the public, but they do not do so. How can they do so? If you consider it as a social responsibility, then every day, the newspapers, whether it is print media, online media, it must come out with a research article, which doesn't come out. Today we are in the midst of, a very, very critical debate, rights of men. Okay, the law has given us a backlash. The women activists who spend their life in fighting out for women's rights, they are on a back foot because the law has given scope to some mischievous minds which have taken away the rights of men. That is what is the debate. I do not find any article from the journalist, women journalist, speaking about the history of dowry dates. Why did we came out with the Dowry Prohibition Act in 1961? So this is what is required, and this is what is expected from media education and from media students. So I would just end with, since there is no time, I would just end up here saying that, feel proud of yourself that you are a scholar of journalism. Feel proud of yourself that though you are getting less salary, I know because students interact with me, but you have a greater role to play in the field of journalism. You have a greater role to play in the public sphere. You have got the chance to be in the public, to save the public sphere, to influence the private sphere. The society is looking for you. So that is what is required. More and more research articles from journalism students. And I know since IMC is going to open up so many master's programs, I have many hopes from the IMC Institute, because whoever I interacted, students from IMC also joined my department to complete master's program. So I found them very bright. So I have many hopes from IIMC, at least instead of joining the corporate sector, because that takes away much of your freedom, you can enrich the knowledge base of the society being in the public sphere. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one question on the net, particularly directed to Professor Anand Pradhan. It's a commentary on his observation of closure of institution and also a query about what can probably the government do to strengthen journalism education. I would request Anand to quickly comment on that. And there was one question which we didn't take. There was one question there. So I think we will take those two questions as the final two questions. And the panelists are also there. Meera, I answered the question on your behalf about press associations, and I took that liberty because time was running short. Okay, maybe the question will go to Jaya in terms of the Northeast question, and Anand will respond first, and then we'll take the question.
Sir, I think let's allow everyone to
Right.
have a question. Sometimes listening question is better than the answering them.
Please, we can spend another.
And allow first her to start.
Because she asked the question.
Because you have a better ball.
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
That's very good. You are giving the
Yes, yeah. Because otherwise, we will be
Uh-huh.
talking. Yeah, please go ahead, ma'am.
This may not be working. So, but you can.
No, this is
We,
use the
we are
mic,
hearing
ma'am.
you. We are hearing you. Please go ahead.
It is audible.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. I mean, it has been really
Come to the
nice
question directly, please.
all of you. And I'm just taking a gist of all what everybody spoke, all the speakers. I am currently doing a PhD. I joined here, and my focus area is how AI is transforming the job scenario in the future. And that the premise started with you, sir, from your first point, how institutions are closing. Now, seeing that and how we need to, you spoke about it, like how we can think of education in a different perspective, especially media education. What is your perspective? How you think that it is in education? What are the changes that we are looking after? Since you are having new courses, master's courses, what are the kind of education that you are needing? Theoretical, practical, on-field? What is your observation? What should be done to bring that bridge that gap, that knowledge gap between core profession and what is currently we are giving to our, the current generation of students that are coming up. So how we can bridge that gap with those kind of education on field, in theory and in practice.
Okay, the panelists have registered your question. We'll take another question and probably the panelists can.
My question is to Anand sir.
Yeah.
You are planning for Master Pro Health, and health is a very topic, actually critical part, like pharmacology, pharmacodynamics, and pharmacology is there. So, what kind of features you are planning for this master course, in particular in health, specialization, and the reach of journalism? This is the question.
You also had a question about Northeast. We cut you short, but if you have a question, please continue with that question. That's why I wanted
question
to.
is my to
Jaya Chakravarti, yes, go ahead.
There is a available of all the infrastructure, but there is a major challenges of the job opportunity. What are the observations of madam?
Oh,
Just
fine. That's the second question. Any other observation, please? Yeah.
Actually, I am from Assam. And I just want to ask you one thing. I just follow up the actually, I just want to ask Professor about how it is relieving about the speaks or the dialects that are available in the Northeastern languages, which do not have a perfect script. Actually, there are many dialects are there. How we can represent those dialects in the field of journalism without having a script or without having proper scripts? How we can promote the journalism or the voices of that particular people or those people who are not yet heard in the mainstream media?
Fair enough.
Sorry for intervening. So I would request all the panelists and the students and scholars, those who are putting any questions, because we are running very late and more than 60 people are waiting for technical sessions.
Okay.
And so those who are having any questions, please ask at your presenting time. And now we have to wind up here, otherwise there is more than 60 people.
All right.
Because this will be going on, sir. This will
Yeah,
be
we are
committed
going
for
to.
1 o'clock, yeah. No.
Please, I know we have to give an opportunity for the audience. We cannot be a talking head panel. That is the reason why we are giving opportunities. I do understand the time limitations, but we ran out of time because we had virtual session was for 1 year with 4 panelists. That's why we got amplified, but the amplification has strengthened the nature of the panel discussion. I have no regrets on the extension of the time. Now we are going to wind up, and Bandita has the network contacts of all the panelists. Yes. And we are going to take your questions and pose it to the group. We have formed a WhatsApp group. This question that you have asked, I will be posing it by 3 p.m. It will go to the WhatsApp group. And whatever response they give, I'll transfer it to Bandita. So now on to the next session, which the organizers will tell you what the dynamics are. On behalf of both ICA India chapter as well as the Department of Berhampur, I thank the virtual panelists who accepted our invitation to come and spend some time with us this morning. I thank you very much, and we appreciate your views. I also recognize the presence of our in-person resource persons who have contributed a lot towards understanding and enriching the different perspective, particularly when they brought in cultural anthropological perspective, which is also a way that the panelists have suggested that journalism department can talk. We also are appreciative of the views of the Utkal University professor who talked about the social science dimension that probably is missing and that could be strengthened. On that very optimistic note, I thank the Berhampur University for giving me this opportunity to coordinate these two important sessions. We will meet again, we will network and strengthen the cause of journalism education in the days to come. Thank you so much, each one
Thank
of
you,
you.
sir. Thank you.
Now the floor is yours, sir.
Classroom 1, 2, and seminar.